In ancient Greece, theophany referred to those rare experiences where a god or goddess becomes visible to human perception. In Europe, by the Middle Ages, the idea that the deity can appear to earthly eyes was well established through the biblical tales of the burning bush and the visions of Ezekiel and others. The whirlwind of evolution which arrived with the Renaissance brought with it new perspectives on what it means to see God. In Giovanni Bellini's masterwork, Saint Francis in the Desert, we might imagine that Francis is, in this moment, beholding his God. But there is no physical sign that God is present. The seeing is entirely inward. In the Middle East, this capacity to see with, let's call it the eye of the heart, is beautifully explored by Rumi, Hafiz, and other Sufi luminaries who repeatedly invite us to glimpse the beloved. Now, in this fundamentally secular, scientifically bound culture, the notion of theophany may no longer be viable, not because we have lost the capacity to see deeply, but because the nature of perception is understood in a dramatically different way. Quantum physics has established that the relationship between the observer and that which is observed is much more complex than we had imagined, because the very act of observing something may affect it. More recently, neuroscience raises intriguing questions about how the mechanisms of perception themselves shape what we see and hear, and may, in effect, generate the reality we inhabit. Even if theophany in the traditional sense is no longer a useful concept for many of us, we might still ask, to what extent can I connect through my perceptual faculties with something more substantial, more enduring than the parade of material phenomena ceaselessly passing before my eyes? For the sake of engaging with this question, let's call that underlying ground of being source. But can we see source? The eyes are physical receptors that trigger chemical and electrical events in the circuitry of the brain. This process depends on light reflected from or generated by material objects. How can there be seeing that is not coming from and ultimately about physical phenomena? The legend of Newton observing gravity in the falling of an apple provides, if not an answer, at least a direction in which to probe. Assuming that this wasn't the first time that Sir Isaac saw something drop to the ground, he must have been in a mindset which enabled him to see more deeply in that moment. The biochemical electrical state of his brain, the particular array of brain excitation generating a particular matrix of brain waves, made it possible for him to see through the falling apple to the underlying law by whose command it descended. Through MRIs, EEGs, and other means, neuroscientists are now actively exploring how brain activity relates to human cognitive, emotional, and behavioral abilities. Everything from memory functions to pathological responses are now explored in the minute detail of neuronal activity. In a way, these laboratory findings confirm what has been known intuitively since time immemorial. For example, Buddhist meditation techniques recognize that the transformation of consciousness begins by deliberately entering a quiescent mind space. Through breathing, concentration, and other means, meditators are actually modulating brain activity. Likewise, the prayers, incantations, and rituals of the great religions induce altered states in order to establish internal connections with the divine. All this should make it pretty clear that the everyday, ordinary mind state that we use to navigate reality and get things done is unlikely to see source. In order to see what is really here, immanent and lasting, we must allow a state of openness, clarity, and receptivity to naturally arise within us. In his book, The Open Path, Elias Amidon tells us this transparent, pure awareness at the center of our being is a clear window to oneness. Or to put it another way, only Source can see Source.